Ceasefire now. Hands off. Stop the war. Why are you shouting that at Israel and not Hamas? Stop now? While Hamas holds over 100 Israeli hostages in Gaza? While Hamas is saying there will be a second, a third, a fourth October 7th? Or is this a war that must be fought? Welcome back, and thank you for wanting to know the facts and the truth. What's going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is big. You can't miss it on the news. You can't miss it on college campuses, and you really can't miss it online. But what are the facts? Why is this happening? That's what we're here to answer. Our approach is to examine the major themes and focus on the important events that help you make sense of what's happening today. We care about knowing the truth. We also care about the basic human right to live in peace. We care about ending the suffering. We care about finding justice. And we think you're here because you do too. The only path for us then is to go after the facts and be open to what they show us. Life can be beautiful without hatred, violence, and war. And maybe the way there starts with better understanding each other, better understanding the Jewish people, the Palestinian people, the history of their conflicts and past peace efforts, and some of the major issues standing in the way of forging real peace. What the Hell is Going On in Gaza is a 9-part series made up of 30 episodes, each designed to help you understand a different but important part of the picture. As part 2 of our series continues, our focus stays on answering some basic questions about Hamas. Here in episode 11, we'll go a step further. Given what we know about this situation, about Israel, and about Hamas, we'll consider the question of what must be done and why. Please be aware that this episode contains some descriptions of violence and sexual assault that viewers may find disturbing. If you would like to avoid this content, please refer to the times in the episode notes so you can skip ahead. Now let's get into it. We've covered quite a lot already, so let's quickly step through it to help clarify what should and can be done now. We learned in part 1 that Jews are indigenous to the land of Israel, that they're not white colonizers, that Israel is not an apartheid state, and it's not committing genocide. What all that means is that Hamas does not have any moral basis for attacking Israel over and over, let alone using such morally reprehensible tactics. As a side note, please be sure to watch part 6, where we address the important issues of morality in greater detail. We learned so far in part 2 that Hamas is committed to the path of terrorism, cannot be trusted, diverts and steals the international aid meant for Palestinians, and has brought the citizens of Gaza, as well as Israel, nothing but misery and death. Those are just generalizations, though. This isn't easy, but let's talk about what Hamas actually did on October 7th. Time magazine published just a small sample of the sickening atrocities committed by Hamas on October 7th. We'll read a few excerpts, hard as that is to do. First, here's how Time magazine explains the situation. Quote, "The appalling record of Hamas's brutality has set a new standard in graphic evidence of unrivaled human atrocities. In the aftermath of the October 7th brutal massacre of 1,400 innocent Israeli civilians, including mass rapes, tortures, bonding and immolation of toddlers, beheadings, and live mutilation, massive, horrifying video and photographic imagery of the grotesque scenes was available through the sickening scenes which greeted Israeli rescuers who found few victims alive, but even more footage was provided by the gleeful terrorists themselves from their own body cameras, dash cams, and the devices of victims as they were being slaughtered. Then some of the horrifying scenes are reported. It's awful, but we need to hear it to understand who and what Israel is facing here." Quote, "The first victim said she saw a young woman with copper-colored hair, blood running down her back, pants pushed down to her knees. One man pulled her by the hair and made her bend over. Another penetrated her," Sapir said, "and every time she flinched, he plunged a knife into her back." Here's another excerpt. Quote, "She said she then watched another woman, shredded into pieces. While one terrorist raped her, she said, another pulled out a box cutter and sliced off her breast. One continues to rape her, the other throws her breast to someone else." The New York Times conducted an in-depth investigation into Hamas's crimes and found what they called, quote, "a pattern of rape, mutilation, and extreme brutality against women in the attacks on Israel. We'll read a few excerpts from their report. Quote, "The Times interviewed several soldiers and volunteer medics who together described finding more than 30 bodies of women and girls in and around the rave site and in 2 kibbutzim in a similar state as Miss Abdush's. Legs spread, clothes torn off, signs of abuse in their genital areas. The Times viewed photographs of one woman's corpse that emergency responders discovered in the rubble of a besieged kibbutz with dozens of nails driven into her thighs and groin. The Times also viewed a video provided by the Israeli military showing 2 dead Israeli soldiers at a base near Gaza who appeared to have been shot directly in their vaginas. The Media Line reported on Hamas's crimes as well, writing, quote, "Evidence on display at Israel's Forensic Pathology Center confirms Hamas's atrocities. The excerpts that follow are perhaps the most disturbing, but please do listen. Quote, the proportion of bodies we've received who are charred is high," Kugel explained. "Many have gunshot wounds in their hands, showing they put their hands up to their faces in defense. Many were burned alive in their homes. We know they were burned alive because there is soot in their trachea, their throats, meaning they were still breathing when set on fire." Kugel also explained that the age range of the victims spans from 3 months to 80 or 90 years old. Many bodies, including those of babies, are without heads. Think for a minute what America would do in Israel's situation. If America was invaded, our citizens raped, tortured, and murdered, and many taken as hostage back to the perpetrator's land, if the perpetrator had attacked over and over in the past and now swore to attack again and again in the future, if the perpetrator still held our people hostage, including girls and small children, if no one else would stop the perpetrator, if the perpetrator was emboldened by the world refusing to condemn them, if a ceasefire allowed the perpetrator to rest, regroup, rearm, and strengthen its defenses, America wouldn't agree to a ceasefire. America would destroy this enemy. Any country would. Remember when al-Qaeda attacked America on 9/11? The U.S. went to war in Afghanistan to fight al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Remember when ISIS brutally fought to establish an Islamic caliphate in Iraq, Syria, and across the Middle East, committing hideous atrocities against Yazidis, Christians, Shia Muslims, and others? U.S., Iraqi, and Kurdish forces pounded them. Everyone should agree that war is terrible, but sometimes you have to fight. George Orwell, famous for writing Animal Farm in 1984, lived through 2 world wars and understood that certain ideologies must be defeated. He summed it up with the words, quote, "War is evil, but it is often the lesser evil. Hamas too must be defeated. Hamas has promised to keep attacking. Hamas rejects Israel's right to exist. Israel has no choice but to fight Hamas. It is quite literally the only thing to be done. Even if Israel didn't want to fight Hamas, Hamas has promised that it will fight Israel. Quote, we will repeat October 7th attacks again and again. We will never recognize the usurper Zionist government and will continue our jihad-like movement until the liberation of Jerusalem." Once more, let's review what we know. Hamas is committed to destroying Israel and killing Jews. Hamas leaders still say it very openly. It's in Hamas's founding charter. Hamas rejects any peace with Israel. Hamas tortured, raped, kidnapped, and murdered on October 7th, and now proudly boasts they will do it again. Hamas is a genocidal terrorist organization that must be stopped. Israel's challenge is more than just making sure that what happened on October 7th will never happen again. They have to make sure that the ambitions Hamas has been so clear about can't ever be realized. And there is truly only one way to do that. Like George Orwell, philosopher John Stuart Mill knew that war was sometimes necessary. Quote, war is an ugly thing, but not the ugliest of things. The decayed and degraded state of moral and patriotic feeling, which thinks that nothing is worth war, is much worse. It might be easy for those whose safety and survival are not threatened, who aren't under constant attack, to believe that the ugliness of war is too much, but they're wrong. Lastly, let's touch on the criticism that Israel's war against Hamas will only serve to create new terrorists. The argument is that the misery and death will inspire yet another generation of Palestinians to hate Israel, continuing the awful cycle of violence. Killed some 800,000 civilians. The Vietnamese don't hate Americans today, even though America exacted a devastating toll on the country in a war that killed some 600,000 civilians. Why then is there this apparent certainty that Israel is only creating more terrorists by defending itself? That's simply not logical. Thank you for continuing to watch our series, What the Hell is Going On in Gaza? We hope you got a much better understanding of Hamas and now have more context for understanding the situation in Gaza. If you'd like to leave a comment or get in touch, visit our website at www.getthefactsmiddleeast.com. There's a lot more to learn in this series, so we hope you'll go on to part 3, How Did We Get Here? If we're going to look forward and think intelligently about solutions, we first need to understand what's happened to lead us here. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your interest in learning more about the war in Gaza. And remember, where there is no knowledge, there can be no insight.